but when you see somebody dart around you at 190 miles an hour, holy. And they tell you this is why you have to stay between the dots, because if you pick that guy off, you're sending him and somebody else into the wall at 190 miles an hour.
Hey, welcome to Lunch Break. We are so glad you joined us today. I'm here with Mike Harvey, our producer, my friend, and we are joined by Mike Van Pelt via Zoom and Georgia. So, Mike Van Pelt, glad to have you in.
I'm glad to be here. The sun's out today. We avoided some of the stuff that Florida got up here. We had winds yesterday, but we avoided it. And so, just a quick. Just to let everybody know, our thoughts and prayers go with all the people in Florida,
and
on the coast of South Carolina, because this hurricane stuff is pretty serious.
Yeah, it is. So I never kept track of that until my daughter moved to Nashville, and now I'm alerted every time they have a flood in Kentucky or Nashville or anywhere in here. So, or tornado. Do you guys get tornadoes there, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, they happen here. It doesn't seem to be as frequent in some other regions of the country, i.e. Oklahoma, and Arkansas and the Midwest. I grew up in Iowa. We were always on alert for
we're from California, and we get earthquakes.
Earthquakes, yeah.
And we're supposed to fall off the edge. I think we've been hearing that since the 60s.
My entire life, yeah.
but my daughter, when she moved to Nashville, Mike, when the tornado alarm would go off, she would call us, and she would FaceTime us, and she would point the camera, and we would get to see the trees bent over, rain coming down, lightning. And I told her, I go, this is not good for parents that are living 2,700 miles away. I go, it makes me want to get on an airplane, which I wouldn't get there for another week. But it was kind of terrifying, and I was just telling her, I go, you could text me and just say this, and I would probably have less stress. Well, my daughter went back there. We started getting educated on what you guys deal with back there, Mike. So,
well, I'll tell you what, now I've lived with that my whole life. I did feel. Do you remember? Oh gosh, probably been about 5 or 6 years ago, an earthquake that hit the West Coast, and it started like up near DC, and it cracked, several monuments and all that. Do you remember that?
I do.
That earthquake happened all the way down into South Carolina. That's where the fault line was. And for a handful of seconds there, I actually felt our house shake. And so I can only imagine what that is like on a large scale, like some of the stuff you guys get in California.
Well, yeah, we had one not that long ago.
About a year and a half ago.
The water was
we had
in the pool.
And my daughter was down. My oldest daughter who lives in Irvine, she was here with a friend. And it got to the point where I was like, hey, let's get under the table. So it was
a pretty good size one. Yeah,
it shook pretty good. I think it was a 6.9 or something.
Yeah, I was sitting in my recliner, and I was like, what? Like my equilibrium's off all of a sudden.
Here's what I want you to do before you guys fall into the ocean. Okay? If you could do this for us, it would be great. Make sure you don't lose any of your grapes, because I would really be upset if I couldn't get my Napa Valley wine. Okay?
Well, I tell you what, I used to be in the ag business, Mike.
And, I did too.
Yeah, Mike Harvey and I were in the ag business, and those are a very revered crop.
Yeah.
In California.
Oh, yeah. Been out there a couple of times. Now, I grew up in the Midwest, so I have a heart for farming. I have a heart for farmers because it's virtually in my blood, right?
Yeah.
And so going out to California, I didn't realize in my own, I guess, stupidity that, those grapes, they're like gold, man. That is actual farming. Yeah. And it was fascinating to me to listen to these guys talk about how to grow grapes. And it's really no different than growing corn or soybeans in the Midwest. They're just two different crops, really. And the terrain and just the watering. it's it's also intriguing to me that I love talking about agriculture, but I grew up around it, so it's just been a part of my life.
When we were back there this last summer, we were driving through Kentucky and Tennessee. It was interesting because the difference is that out here we have more permanent crops versus just a volume of crops. You could see corn that went forever. You could see wheat that went forever. Here, you maybe have some stone fruit orchards, and you have almonds, and you may have pistachio. Then you've got grapes. All permanent crops. And it usually takes 4 or 5 years to get a commercial crop. But out there, it's like they had an ocean of corn that they would harvest, and then all of a sudden you would see one street you could see forever because it was dirt. The other street was still in corn. Mm-hmm. That was phenomenal to me because I've never seen that quantity of acreage planted.
Right.
We used to, I don't think they grow much cotton here anymore.
No.
But we used to see that with cotton here in the San Joaquin Valley.
That was kind of phasing out when I was a kid.
Yeah, cotton was. So, Mike, we're going to jump in because we're friends. And I enjoy being on your show. Mike is the host and the producer and the director of the True Man podcast. I think you take all those roles.
Yeah, I'm a jack of all trades.
Mike, you are, and I want to get into that because you're also a life coach, and I like what you do because one of your specialties is working with men. And as you work with men, I did want to transgress back to your younger life because our Lunch Break show is really getting to know you, getting our audience to know you, because I do think in our future we have a lot to do with Mike Van Pelt.
Yeah.
Just in shows and.
We have a lot to do with you. I got some ideas.
Yeah, I like it. We did our relevant rants this morning, Mike.
We did.
If you ever want to see something as funny, because Mike Harvey, we celebrated his birthday today.
Happy birthday, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so you have to watch that episode because we had fun with it this morning.
We did.
But Mike, let's go back. So you're born in, I think you said Iowa, right? And
Central Iowa.
And that probably affected your thought process and your growing up. I do see that you graduated from Arizona and University of Arizona. And tell us how all that began. What was formulative for the young Mike Van Pelt to take us up to where you're at today?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I grew up in a town in Central Iowa, about 13,000 people, which is a pretty good sized town in Iowa. I grew up about 25 minutes from Iowa State University, if I had to give you an idea of where that was, which is in Ames, Iowa, and about an hour north of Des Moines. So a big trip for us was to go down to Des Moines to go to the mall. That was a big deal. But, I reflect back on growing up in Central Iowa probably a lot more favorably than I did, 30 years ago, because what you get in a small community like that, a very Christian, very conservative, people know what's going on. They know who you are. They know whether you're in trouble. They know when you've been in the police report. They know when you've been in the hospital. And, they know all that.
Did you guys have a party line? I know going back to Nebraska, I'd go to my grandparents' house and they'd have a party line and everybody could listen in if they wanted to.
We didn't at our house, but my grandparents did. So yeah, I do remember all that stuff. But yeah, everybody knows your business in a small town like that. But I look at it now and I think I understand better why I enjoy a sense of community and things. My graduating class, I think, was about 170 people. You knew everybody. One of my best friends in life, we talk almost every day, and he's in Dallas, Texas now. We went to, you went to church with people. You went to school with people. So you really got to know who people were. And so it was, and I never looked at, things like, well, is this guy rich? Is this guy poor? We were all just kind of there together in a middle class, world. And, there were a few haves, but, most of us did without, and we're okay with it. Mm-hmm. In fact, the first pair of Nikes I got Okay, when I finally was able to get the Nike Cortez,
Uh-huh.
other Nikes that everybody was so coveted, I slept with them. That's how much it meant to me, because that was a big deal in my house, you know.
What, are you still a sneaker guy?
Well, I'll tell you what, I am into extreme foot comfort these days. Yeah. But I've had to cut out some brands. So I already mentioned one, and there's some reasons for that. I got my Hey Dudes on because when I'm just when I'm just trekking around the house and doing podcasts, I'm like, gotta have the Hey Dudes on because they're just that's comfy.
I'm with you on Hey Dude. I don't know if you've experienced Hey Dude.
No, never heard of that.
Yeah, no. Hey, they're.
I know what Dude Perfect is, but
I have a good reflection of my time back in Iowa, and such a great appreciation for the work ethic and the people, in the Midwest that are sometimes forgotten.
So, Mike, as we're talking about your life, and we'll continue on with that, Tom said I have a responsibility. I'm not going to neglect that this time because I did it before.
And I don't let you forget that either.
You don't. You did. You called me out right on the show. We have fun together, Mike.
We do.
So one of the questions we ask every guest is, what is something that people don't know about you? And this isn't like your deepest, darkest secret or anything.
Don't confess on here.
This is, something like, for example, Tom's deaf in one ear.
I am. Mike reminds me, and you're sitting on my bad side.
Well, that's your fault, not mine.
That's why. That's why you talk so loud.
I do. I was just.
All right. I actually have a fun one. One. Although my close friends and family know this about me very intimately. I love Indy race cars. I love going to Indianapolis. I've been to the Indy 500. It was my goal as a kid when I went to my first couple of races to go to the 100th running of the Indianapolis 500, and I did. And not only that, here's the fact. So I set it up. I went to the Mario Andretti driving experience and drove an Indy car at Charlotte Motor Speedway, top speed 158 miles an hour.
Nice.
And we're still cleaning out my pants.
I don't get that fast on my motorcycle.
No. What? So how many laps do you get to do when you do that, Mike?
You know what? It's been a number of years. So they give you a couple of warm-up laps, and then I want to say it's like about 3 or 4 laps, but you can buy different packages. And, I got to tell you, I love speed, but that's a completely different experience because an Indy car, you're basically, by the time you get strapped into the car and you're down in the car, your rear end is probably 3 or 4 inches off the ground. So you're low to the ground. So it's not like driving a car. Right. So your whole, line of sight is different than what it would ordinarily be. And they start you in the pit lane. And the way these particular cars start up, they in this realm, because they're older cars, obviously they're less inexpensive cars than a regular Indy car, but they have to push start you. But they strap you into the car and you're sitting there on pit lane. And I remember thinking to myself, holy crap. That is the turn 4 wall that I see at the end. And they push you off, man. And you got no choice. You got to go at that point. Now, what they tell you is there's dots in the turns. So you have to be between the dots. And the reason you have to be between the dots is they have a professional driver in a 2-seat car in the upper lane. And when you might be going 140 or 150 miles an hour and you think that's fast. But when you see somebody dart around you at 190 miles an hour, and they tell you, this is why you have to stay between the dots. Because if you pick that guy off, you're sending him and somebody else into the wall at 190 miles an hour. But it's a thrilling experience, I got to tell you.
That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
I've driven with this guy in Vegas, and I had to say, "Hey, slow down." Remember that?
Yeah. Well,
I'll tell you what, it'll get your heart up. That's for sure. It'll get your heart up. But it's quite an adrenaline rush. It was a thrill.
We have a little trivia. We have a gentleman that lives in Bakersfield that I believe won the Indianapolis 500 twice.
Well, that would be Rick Mears.
Rick Mears, yes.
Huh.
Rick's in town,
Yeah.
and Roger, and yeah, from Bakersfield, California. So I remember when he won.
Four-time. He's a four-time.
Four-time. Maybe I slept through two of them. I don't
In
know.
fact, it was
Mike's
one of the
there.
biggest thrills of my life. I was at the 1985 Indianapolis 500 when Rick Mears was still driving back there, but Al Unser Sr. won his fourth.
Yeah, it's funny. Rick and I went to the same high school at different times. We've both been inducted in the High School Hall of Fame at South High in Bakersfield. Well, that so they we were South High Rebels, but they renamed us last year, and I think we're the Spartans now, South High Spartans. So. We used to always say once a rebel, always a rebel, but for obvious reasons, the high school got their name canceled. And so now I guess Rick and I are Spartans, and
Yeah.
by default. So, I won't go into that. I won't. We already did relative rants.
Right,
I
right.
could get this guy going
You can.
like
easily.
at 100 miles an hour really quick.
So you were telling us about growing up in Iowa, and then you eventually went to University of Arizona in Tucson, right?
Well, I actually did that online, so it's just kind of part of my story is when we were in South Carolina, I was going through this stage in my life where I was like extremely unhappy with my profession. I just wasn't. I wasn't being filled up, and my wife said, "Why don't you just stay home with the kids, figure out what you want to do with your life?" I worked with a career counselor and decided to go back to school. And I was able to do that online. I was able to be a stay-at-home dad, and I was doing a tremendous amount of volunteering in the nonprofit world and at my church. And I really felt like that was all taking me down a path that, at that point when I was doing that degree work of probably being an executive director of a nonprofit or something like that. That's what I thought at the time.
So I think at one point, what was the profession your wife was in?
So my wife is in human resources. Yep. She's head of human resources for a company here in Atlanta.
I like that. So Mike, when you were, how many children did you have?
We have two. Yeah. My son will be 20 in December, and my daughter is 17.
Is she a senior now? I think
She is a senior in high school. Yes. And we are college shopping. In fact, I just picked them up from the airport yesterday. They flew in from New York. They looked at 4 different schools in New York because my daughter is, I would call her a Broadway style actress.
I like that. I like that. So she's looking at some type of a theatrical school in. Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, that'll be a fun period of your life. Both my daughters have graduated, and one lives in Nashville and one in Irvine, and that's going to be a fun period of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to some degree, it feels like we're empty nesters already. So it's kind of cool because, my wife and I, we don't have to worry about the kids anymore. We don't have to drive them anywhere. And so we could, we could go out for dinner on Friday night or Saturday night or whenever we want. It's like dating again. It's pretty cool.
I love it. I love it.
So you
Go ahead, Mike.
You graduated with a master's of public administration from there, and I know now you're doing the life coaching and the podcasting and stuff. But tell us about the in between period.
Was that the unhappy period, Mike?
I would call it a discovery period, as a matter of fact.
like
Was it all? Was it happy? I'll tell you what. I grew up in a time and a place. I'm 52 now. But when I grew up, they used to say, "Hey, just go get your college degree. You'll get a job, and you'll have the picket fence, the dog, and the wife." Right? I'm like, "Oh, okay. I guess that's the formula, right?" Well, I didn't exactly do that right out of the gate when I was in college, but what happened was that was still my mentality. So I thought, well, I've got all this volunteer experience. I've got this business experience. Now I have the degrees. I'm incredibly hireable, right? No. And so I took a lot of no's. I took a lot of, we'll call you back. I took a lot of not hearing from anybody. And what I did with that was I internalized it. And it created this whole period of, well, I guess I'm just not worthy. Nobody wants to hire me. And so it was a downer period. And it also created me maybe not being as present with my family as I should have been, which is a no. But what happened was I decided at a certain point, well, and this was the beginning of the true man story, only I didn't know it at the time. So I decided, well, hell, I've got the knowledge, skills, and abilities. I'm not going to let corporate America beat me down. I'm going to try to figure this out. And so I started doing some business consulting with a company that had a one-page business plan. And I thought it was a spectacular idea, only I didn't really know what I was doing, but I thought, what the heck? And so I was at a business networking event and I met a guy there by the name of Paul Bailey. And Paul and I had lunch together and we absolutely hit it off. He was a financial advisor. I had a background in insurance and financials. And so we just immediately started telling each other our story. And my mind went, well, this is kind of unusual. This is an interesting conversation, but it's kind of unusual. And we thought, we're going to start our own business networking group. And it very quickly turned into a men's small group. And we started recruiting some guys. And so we went down this whole journey of men's small group, and we met some people that helped mentor us. And at a certain point, we decided, well, we need to name the group. Let's formalize this. And we went through this whole thing of trying to figure it out. And I was, just going through the Bible and found this story about Jesus Christ walk on earth as a true man. And I thought, well, we're men. Well, that's a pretty good idea. Let's just call our group True Man. So we decided to call our group True Man. And so we start our journey through men's small group. And we got connected with a group and we went to a retreat. Now, I grew up in the Lutheran church, not to knock Lutherans or Catholics, but we're not too outgoing, And so we don't do things like retreats and stuff like that. So I go to my first retreat. And it was really on that Saturday morning of that weekend retreat when they played a song called You Are Loved, where, we were told to think of it as God singing it to us. And it hit me in that spot right then and there. Whoa, God wants an intimate and loving relationship with me. And I want it as bad as he wants it. And we could team up and, this is awesome. I didn't know, never occurred to me that although I'd gone to church all my life, that God loved me that much. I didn't know, had no idea. And it began to change my life because what I took away from that was, wow, I got a great group of guys around me and they have helped me get through a difficult period in my life. And I needed that. And it made me go, wow, there's something here. And I maybe want to do this, and I had big plans at the end of 2019 going into 2020. And I'll be daggone if we didn't have this thing called COVID hit. It totally flipped, everything on its ear. And, there was kind of this screeching halt for me initially, primarily because the beauty of men's small group is you talk about being authentic and real and not wearing a mask. And then all of a sudden COVID hits and we're asked to isolate when we've been telling everybody not to isolate in our group. We're asked to wear a mask and we talk about all the time not wearing a mask. And I know that what I'm talking about, I understand why we were told to wear a mask and why we were told to isolate, but it didn't register with me that what I'd been talking about, now I've been I'm being told to do when I told everybody not to do it. And our men's small group went through about a month of complete confusion. Like, what do we do? And after about 30 days, we said, screw it. There's never been a greater time for us to meet. And we are going to keep meeting in person every Friday. because we don't think that everybody's got this right. And we did. And, from time to time, one of us went through our bout with COVID and all that fun stuff. And, we just fought through it, but we never missed our Friday meetings. And it was on June 15th of 2020. My wife came home. She'd been called up to the office. All the executives flew in and they said, Jill, thanks for 14 years of service, but your position is no longer going to be here. And in an instant, when she came home and told me that, I knew that our lives were about to flip upside down. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I knew our lives were about to change. And I went searching. We went searching together. We were trying to figure out how could we stay where we're at and not disrupt our children's lives. And, because we knew she was probably going to have to relocate in order to find a new job. The end result was I happened to run across a guy. I've never been able to recreate this, that had a coaching business. He had the coaching tools. He had the back office. He had everything I needed to get myself on track. I called him. We talked, we hit it off, and we started a relationship. And I said, I'm going to hold off on this until I get to wherever it is I'm going, because I don't know where that is right now, but he's like, just keep going through the training. I'm here for you when you're ready. One day I sent him a couple of blogs. He called me back and he said, Mike, these are great. Have you ever thought about doing a podcast? And I went, that's funny, because we talk about that all the time in our men's small group. We thought it was a joke. We'd be like, well, that would have made a great podcast had we recorded it. And so long story short, I started the podcast. I brought Paul on board and I couldn't come up with a better name. So we just brought our men's small group name and I called it the True Man Podcast. And what happened was Paul at a certain point said, I can't keep up with you, man. You're going to have to do something different. So I started doing the interviews, but what I didn't recognize was that the podcast was beginning to grow my brand.
I love it.
I didn't know until somebody pointed it out. And so really where I'm at today is True Man has been following me around for a number of years. And it's been with me for always, right? Because it's in the Bible. Yeah. Jesus Christ walk on earth as a true man. But the beauty of it is I'm now in a time and a place where I get to go on that discovery of what is a true man? What makes a true man? How do we become true man? From the ultimate role model who walked the face of the earth, Jesus Christ himself. How sweet is that? And so that's just part of my daily. I get to try to figure that out.
You know what's so cool, Mike, is that I see this happen a lot in people's lives where they'll get put in a position where they're forced to overcome it. And I love the fact that you said you weren't going to stay there and you just started doing the next thing. And I love the fact that you went to a retreat, which I encourage people to go to, men especially, that when you came back, you had a new relationship that was defining who you were now. And as you put that into place, you also put it into place with other men. And then you guys were challenged. And I love the fact that you didn't back down from the challenge. But we all did. I think when we all heard it, I got to be privileged because we're a large church. In 2003, we're the third fastest growing church in America. So we got invited with a Zoom meeting with Governor Newsom. And I could realize this is before they canceled the church. And I was on this Zoom meeting, and I could feel the gravitational pull. And there was a lot of Northern California pastors on this Zoom call. And I was on there so they could see me. I was really quiet. And so as I was representing our church. But then when it finished, I didn't say anything, but I called our senior pastor and I said, they're getting ready to shut us down. I go, I got this from the pod. I think I told you, Mike, didn't I? Uh-huh. I was on this podcast. Everybody's like saying, hey, we're behind you. We're ready to do something different. And I was like, holy smokes, no, we're not. I go, how can we shut the church down? You know, of course, I think it was the next day where he made the announcement that no in-person churches were happening. And like you guys, Mike, we did it for, I think, 30 days. And we got to a point we said, oh, this is not working. We've got to somehow come back out. I had a Bible study that we never quit going to, did we, Mike? We met in the parking lot. I was at a Starbucks that Mike and I were at this morning. We had 11 guys meet. But when Starbucks shut down, we just went to the parking lot. So we would order our coffee through the line and we'd go sit in the parking lot and do the Bible study. But that was summertime. and so, but it was a state of confusion because we had never been mandated that. And then we all just figured it out. You guys figured it out for 30 days and said, what the heck? We're going to meet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm just saying 30 days. I don't even know that it was that long, but I will tell you, we did a few Zoom calls begrudgingly.
Yeah.
And we were just trying to figure it out because we knew that something felt a little off.
Yeah.
You know, and it was off, and almost instantly there were 2 or 3 of us specifically that were like, I don't know about this one. This seems like a big fat, lie. And but yet people this was the challenge of COVID, right? It didn't feel right, but yet there were people getting sick. So you knew something was a little off, but you didn't know what it was. And I'll be honest, I didn't know exactly until I got it. And I got it in over Christmas of 2019. No kidding. We convinced my wife's parents not to travel for fear they might catch it because they're older. They have some health stuff. And the week of Christmas, I go to get a haircut. I go to the dentist's office and I went to the gym twice. Somewhere in there, I got COVID.
All the high exposure areas.
Yeah, I remember sitting at Christmas dinner and we were talking and I said, yeah, if I ever got COVID, probably just lose my sense of taste and the sniffles. The next morning I get up and I'm like, we're opening Christmas presents. I'm like, I don't know. The whole day I was a little tired, but I just chalked it up to just being tired. The next morning I get up and I'm feeling it, man. And I call my wife into the bedroom and I said, get your parents the hell out of here immediately. Something's not right. And I went and got tested and I tested positive and it knocked me out for 10 days. I was down in the basement. I have never lived with such pain in like my knees and lower back. And it took me out. It took me out. And I didn't think it would. And the only thing that I've told people this, I was poisoned. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I was poisoned, And, but what happened was that was also, I realized how frail I could be in that moment. And that if God wanted to take me out, he could take me out. And it really got me thinking. And, so it was an interesting way to start my year, not knowing what was ahead.
Well, I think that's and which I think is also really cool what you do, Mike, and your coaching and stuff, because that was used almost whether it was by whoever was right. It could have been even Satan or whatever, right? We'll get into that little touchy subject, but it was used as a tool to isolate, right? And there's been other things that have come and attacked men, and which is again what I think is so great that you do. And men have been attacked from all angles for so long, for so many years, really over the past decade, especially, and it's just ramped up and increased. So again, that's why it's a big part of our mission. What Tom and I do, and with some others that we're involved with, is strengthening the nuclear family. Doing that by strengthening men, and I love that you do the same thing in what you do, Mike.
Well, we have to listen. Men are kings in the kingdom, and if we're not, that, then we're wading in pretty shallow water. And masculinity is not in a good place right now, and it's up to leaders who know what men are capable of, and that we can be kings in our kingdom, to get out there and say, "Come on, guys, wake up." Lead your family well, lead your family well. If we have strong families, if we have strong men, then we have strong businesses, we have strong churches, we have a strong country. You know, why do we find ourselves in the place we are right now? Well, heck, I mean, just start with the divorce rate at 51%. Now, listen, I understand marriages fail. I get it. But part of it is, men, you got to do the work. You got to do the work. I mean, go look in the mirror. You know, if you think your life's crap, find somebody like me and change it. Yeah. So I keep things as simple as possible because we're dudes and we don't like a lot of instructions and we don't like a lot of, you know, manuals and stuff like that. So honestly, I try to schedule a call with somebody. I like to call them comeback calls. You know, so let's get back, you get your life on track, have a comeback, have a pit point, create a second chance in your life. So let's have an initial call. We have an initial call. We talk about what it is that they want to work on. If we feel like we're compatible and that they want the help, then, you know, I start by initially giving them, they go through an assessment. Doesn't take very long, might take them about 20 minutes to do. And what that allows us to do is really unearth, you know, some of the things that may or may not be going on in their life. And so I have after they do the assessment, we have an initial 2-hour call where we go through that, determine what it is that they want to work on. And then we go down the coaching trail. Usually I give people 2 options. I used to give more, but the bottom line is it takes time to make change, and that's okay. So I give them a 6-month or a 12-month option. And, you know, we just dive in and we can meet once a month, or if we need to speed it up, it just depends on where they're at. And that's a beauty about being a small business owner. You can customize whatever you do to fit somebody's needs. And that's important because everybody comes at this from a different place.
So, Mike, is there a website address or a phone number you'd like us to bring up on the screen for you? Or
Sure. I mean, if you go out to True Man Life Coaching, that has all my social media. It has my podcast on there. It has my blogs that I don't always keep up with, dirty little secret, and all my social media. And you can, my calendar's there, and you can catch up with me on that tool.
Mike, so as we're wrapping up, and you want to maybe talk to the men or a wife of a man, what would be something maybe you haven't shared yet that you'd want to tell them? Because there's a lot of wives are looking for help for their husbands. And sometimes, you know, us dudes, we're not going to reach out, but maybe there's a wife out there, maybe there's a man out there. Give us an idea of something that you would use, because you have the life experience, you have the professionalism and the resources. What would you tell them that they will get out of this, or the results that you've seen with some of the other men that you work with?
Yeah, you know, what I've been doing a lot more research around lately is this whole idea of identity. Because a lot of men have lost their identity, but they don't want to talk about it. And they're going through life just they think they're trying to be the best man they can be. They think they're trying to be the best husband they could be. They think they're trying to be the best father that they could be, but they're really not sure. And they want more in their life. And I assure you, because my wife will tell you this, that if you're a wife right now and it feels like your husband's searching, he is. He is. And there's no shame in that. Maybe he just doesn't know. Maybe he was never given the tools, like a lot of men, to raise his hand and ask for help. And what I tell everybody is, if you just raise your hand and ask for help, if you have good people around you, they will show up. Now, if you don't, you probably better change the people that you're hanging out with. But, you know, a lot of men are searching for their identity. Or, you know, I'm 52. I'm trying to figure out how to create a legacy. You know, and part of that is to help men be better fathers and better husbands. We can do this. Am I the best I can be? No. Am I learning every day? Absolutely. And that's what this is. I want to take great men and make them greater, and, so you can lead your family well, because it's a miserable feeling to look in the mirror and know you're not the man you want to be.
Mm-hmm. And knowing that God has called us to more than just status quo. I always tell guys that if the vision that you have for yourself doesn't scare you a little bit, it may not be from God, because it says we can do all things through him who strengthens us, not in our own power. So I tell guys, hey, hang on, enjoy the ride, because God will do more with your life than you can ever imagine.
Hey, Tom, I'll tell you this. This is about as vulnerable as I can be. I show up every day, virtually in the same spot, and try to get 1% better.
Yeah.
And I show up every day scared to death that I'm not going to be able to pull it off. Mm-hmm. And here's what I found out. God wants me scared to death that I might not pull it off. Yeah. And that's why I need to get better 1% every day. And I put it in his hands. I put a lot of this I put it all in his hands. And I said, man, here's what I want. Just send me the people that can help me make the impact in the world today that I want to make. And you know what's amazing, Tom? You showed up. People all over showed. I mean, they just show up. I had a moment back in January, and I went, man, how am I going to keep finding guests for the podcast? I had that thought on a Sunday. On a Monday, I went in a tool that I have. I tweaked an email address, and I have never asked that question again, because I don't know where everybody's coming from. I honestly don't know. God keeps sending them, and that's how I know God's got me where he wants me.
You know what, Mike? Because God knows he can trust you. And I think that's part of the process, that when God, his word says he looks to and fro for somebody's heart that is totally his, so he can support. And that's why, Mike, I think we got hooked up, because Mike and I do the same thing. We don't even know why we do this, do we, Mike? We don't even know why we do this. But as you do it, he's trusting you with men. And I like what you say. We are the kings, and when God wants us to be more than we think we possibly can. I love the fact that what you do, Mike. It's amazing. So yes. I could tell the guys, and I know Mike and I, if you're out there, you need to hook up with Mike Van Pelt through True Man life coaching. Look at his podcast, because he has a lot of wealth and information to tell each and every one of us on how to be a true man. So, Mike, you're amazing. You've been a wonderful guest. You've been, I can say this again with Mike Harvey sitting here. Mike, you are a cut above. I've been in the ministry 28 years. I've dealt with a lot of people, and you're a man that I know who has been through it. And I don't know a man who hasn't been through it, when he gives himself open to God, that God won't take all those circumstances and he'll flip the rock over and use the good out of it that can happen. And you're letting God, because like you said, you're being vulnerable. Just saying, hey, I trust God every day to come in this spot and make me 1% better.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Well, Mike, we're going to be on the air more with you. So, Mike, Harvey, you want to do some housekeeping here?
Yeah, no, we just want to give a quick shout out to all those who helped make this show possible, including today Matt White, Joanna Connell, Alex Howe, Nathaniel Tweed, who is fortunate enough, and I'm so blessed that he's able to do this. He's taking a vacation trip with his dad.
They're going fishing.
They're going fishing,
yeah.
And he's well deserved. He's my number 2 and has been for a long time. And also Tessa Jimenez and Taylor Touchstone for being our creative consultants.
Yeah, Mike, thank you for MLH Productions and bringing us on there. Mike Van Pelt, thank you for being a wonderful guest and a wonderful man of God.
Oh, thank you guys for having me on, and I appreciate those kind words. That makes me feel real good. Thank you.
Well, awesome.
They don't come lightly. I think that you're a man that's earned it. So take care. Thank you for watching for Lunch Break.
God bless.
God bless.